Hey guys, welcome back to Hacks Recaps. Today, I'm progressing to recap a 2008 romance movie named The Sleeping Dictionary. So, let's begin. Within the starting of the movie, we see John, who reaches a village named Shravak via a boat. When reaching there, John meets his senior officer Henry. Henry welcomes him and asks the explanation for his returning here as a result of John was a gifted boy and he had several choices. Aside from this job, John tells Henry on this matter. His father was within the military once he started his job. Then he was sent to the current village. Then he educated some folks of the village. However, later he dies in a very war. Thanks to that, my father dream of teaching this village remained incomplete. However, John has come back here and he can fulfill his father dream. When this Henry takes him to that village, wherever John meets the top of that village, the villagers say this to John. If he needs to measure during this village, then he can got to follow all the principles of this village. When this, the chief offers wine to John and asks him to drink. However, John doesn't drink. However, here he couldn't refuse as a result of if he refused, then it might insult the total village. And then he starts drinking wine. When this, he sees that lovely woman who brought the wine and he keeps staring at her. That woman falls smitten with him initially. Sight. When this, the villagers dance in line with their tradition and that they raise John to bounce as well. When this, John stands up and narrates a verse form to everyone. However, nobody likes his poem. When this, a person named Belancey involves John and he starts dance with John. Seeing each of them dancing, everybody starts riot and makes fun of each of them. Next day, Henry brings that woman for John, whose girl John likes. That girl name is Selma, and John didn't apprehend the language of that village, and Henry tells John, Selma can teach you the language of this village. Henry tells John here that Selma can take care of as each would like and he or she will treat John sort of a wife, and he are often experienced her too. John feels terribly strange once he hears these words of Henry. However, Henry is John boss and however, John tells Henry, I'll learn the language from Selma, however, won't get it on with her. Henry gets angry on hearing John words and walks away. This is often wherever we have a tendency to see some Chinese folks enter the village who are killed by these people. The chief asks John to induce his cut heads. However, John offers this work to Belancey. However, Belancey brings some monkeys rather than Chinese people. Thanks to that, John joke here once more goes to John. There's plenty of insulative feeling on this. At that time, we have a tendency to see the person who works with John brings his kinsman, so John will experience him. As a result of, the person thinks that John isn't experienced. Selma, as a result of John may be a gay. John gets terribly angry once that man says this, which man companion asks Selma to go away from there. On this, the person tells John, if Selma left from here, everybody can assume that John is basically a gay. When this, John stops Selma from leaving. Once John was teaching children. At an equivalent time, he learns that Belancey is that the solely person during this village who can hold his breath for the longest time beneath water. On that, John challenges him and there may be a competition between the two. During this game, John uses atomic number 8 cylinder. However, the folks of this village don't apprehend something concerning oxygen cylinder and John wins this competition easily. When this, the people of this village begin respecting John plenty and that they start obeying him. At night, when Selma is teaching John the language of that village, then each of them come back terribly getting ready to one another and become intimate with every other. When this, both of them endure like this and both of them get intimate several times. Once Selma gets intimate, she starts going to her house. On this, John asks him to remain here for the night. However, Selma tells John if she stayed with him at night, then both of them would get engaged. As a result of it, absolutely was the custom of these folks. However, John didn't need something like that. Consequently, we have a tendency to see Henry invitations John to his house for dinner. Henry incorporates a girl whose name is Cecil. She has come back here when learning from European nation. She was doing analysis on the people here in England, and here she involves no and odd truth concerning the people here. She came to grasp that in earlier times, whenever an official want to come to this village, the villagers want to provide him a lady to be intimate. All this was the custom of this village. That girl teaches the language to the visiting officer. Aside from this, there was conjointly an intimate with him. However, Cecil doesn't apprehend this. The folks here still follow an equivalent customs. Cecil asks John over here, is there any feeling developed in this girl? And also the officer who came. But Henry used to have a unique read from these people. Henry want to assume this issue was completely wrong. Henry used to think There mustn't be any feeling between the woman and also the officer of this village. This is often merely a custom of the village. However, John thinks so. There ought to be a true feeling between the two of them. As a result of John too was feeling the same for Selma now. Cecil needed to try and do more analysis here. John helps him in his research and takes him round the whole village. Cecil Mater sees these two along and he or she tells John, "John, you must marry my girl as a result of you two look nice together." Hearing this, John feels terribly strange. John is unable to talk, something attributable to Henry. Here, at intervals a number of days, the folks of the village suddenly fall sick and these people begin dying, one by one. Nobody might perceive what was happening. Here at that time John and Balanza head to check within the forest wherever they see some those who were mining silver. Seeing these folks, John understands these people are the explanation for whoever is dying in the village. After that, each of them come to the village. Then they see that Selma has conjointly fallen ill. Rice was given to the people of the village to eat and people are dying when feeding the same rice. Mining folks did all this so nobody would realize they're mining and everyone the people would die after eating their rice. Once John involves know about all this, then he tells all the reality to the villagers. After that, the villagers kill all those people. Whereas on the opposite hand, we have a tendency to see John, who is terribly fearful of Selma obtaining sick, and he asks her to marry him. However, Selma speaks to John here. Nobody will enable him for this and it'll be terribly tough for us. When this, John goes to Henry, but Henry agrees clearly as a result of it absolutely was against the rule of his government. Henry tells John here he should break away Selma. If he doesn't separate from Selma, he will be thrown in jail for breaking the rule. An equivalent, we have a tendency to see Selma within the village, whom the folks of the village blackmail and tell her this. If she doesn't escape from John, then her father are going to be killed and John will have to be sent to jail. When this, John and Selma got to adjust everyone. After this, we have a tendency to are shown a scene after 1 year. Within the movie, John and Cecil head to city and marry to every other. Then asks John on her initial night, was there any woman experienced him within the village? However, John tells completely the reality here and he tells everything to Cecil, but this doesn't touch on Cecil. When a number of days, John decides to travel to the same village again. When these folks head to the village, then these people show the moving picture to the villagers, but John's eyes were simply trying to find Selma. Then Cecil conjointly notices John's antics and she tells John she has come to grasp that Selma is married and incorporates a kid and he or she is extremely happy in her life. Consequent day, John sees Selma, who is with her child. Once John sees that child, he feels as if it's his child. He then talks to a person and asks Selma to decision him to a place. When this, John meets Selma and he tells her he is aware of that it is his child and he needs to require his son in his hands. Once Selma reunites John along with his son. However, Selma is sort of afraid that somebody can see her with John. John is extremely happy to envision his son. Consequent day, John makes a toy for his son. Once Cecil's mother sees all this, she becomes very upset and he or she tells John to remain away from Selma. But John doesn't hear her, and he spends plenty of time with Selma, his child. Seeing all this, Balanza gets terribly angry and plans to kill John. When this, he comes within the night to kill John. However, suddenly John wakes up and he escapes from Balanza attack. At that time, John goes and tells all this to Henry. Then Henry takes the choice to kill Balanza. At an equivalent time, John learns a truth that Selma is Henry's girl. When Henry came to the current village for the primary time, he conjointly got experienced a lady and Selma is that the girl of that girl. However, Henry couldn't adopt his daughter as a result of his wife. When this, we have a tendency to see that Balanza is sentenced to death. Balanza goes to be hanged on the second day. But before that, John meets Balanza and he rescues Balanza and asks him to run off from here. Time Selma also comes there. John tells Selma they too will run off from here to measure together. On the opposite hand, Cecil's mother is extremely upset with John and Selma closeness, and he or she tells Selma to induce experienced the new officer who came to the current village. If she isn't intimate with the new officer, then she is going to be placed in jail at the side of her child. When this, the new officer takes Selma to his house and tries to force her. However, Selma kills him as Selma is close to run away with John these days. Whereas on the opposite hand, Cecil tells John that she goes to be the mother of his child. Once John listens to Cecil, he doesn't perceive something concerning what he ought to do next. John then decides that he can stick with Cecil and writes a letter to Selma that he cannot go with her. However, Cecil sees that letter. Cecil knew that John still loves Selma. Therefore she tells John to travel to Selma as a result of. She feels as if John is along with her, then he can ne'er be happy and he will always trust Selma. On the opposite hand, we have a tendency to see Henry and Selma. Henry is trying to find Selma because Selma killed that officer. However, once Selma comes before of Henry, then Henry offers him his gun and says, you usually be happy, and from this place go isolated. Selma comes to know that Henry is her father. However, Selma ne'er aforementioned something concerning Henry, but we have a tendency to see that officer isn't dead. However, and he reaches Henry's wife, tells the police officer to travel and catch John and Selma and kill them each, and that they both raise Henry to hitch their arrange, but Henry tells them he's not progressing to do anything like this currently and he needs the happiness of both his daughters. When this he leaves the officer. The officer goes to seek out John and Selma to kill. He finds John and Selma. He then tries and do wrong with Selma by gun pointing her. Then again the tribals living there come back and they kill that officer. During this method the lives of John and Selma are saved. When this we have a tendency to see the last scene of the movie. Here John is within the same village with Selma and that they are terribly happy with one another, and this is often wherever the moving picture ends.